But I think the other spy films are farcical. Even like James Bond especially, I think is one, for me, I rarely like any James Bond films.
George isn't going to have any gadgets.
Yeah.
Like, George doesn't have gadgets. He's not.
Where's Q? Where's Q? Where's the quartermaster? This is set in England.
Yeah.
Where's
the
your
invisible
Aston
car?
Martin? Yeah, exactly.
This is episode 116 of Flixwatcher podcast.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. We're joined today by Daryl.
Hello.
And Jeanette.
Hi.
From the Sudden Double Deep podcast. And always, here is Helen.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Fan of the show? Make sure you follow us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod. Visit the website flixwatcher.tv for full listings and hit subscribe wherever you find your podcasts.
Just to let you know, guys, all films were available on Netflix UK at the time of recording. Please note, there will be some bad language and there will be spoilers.
Hello, film fans. Welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. In our studio today, we have Daryl and Jeanette. If you would like to say hello to the listeners and tell them about the podcast that you do.
Hello, listeners. Yes, Jeanette and I were part of the Sudden Double Deep podcast, and on our show, we watched 3 films linked by a word in the title. So our very first episode, we covered Impact with Sudden Impact, Double Impact, and Deep Impact. And more recently, we've covered Memories of Murder, Murder in the First, and Dial M for Murder.
How do you actually choose, first of all, that word that links and the films then? Because initially when you say murder, you're like, okay, Murder on the Orient Express. And,
yep.
And then if you don't choose that, it's like, why didn't you choose that one?
I said no to Murder on the Orient Express.
Oh, so there is a vetoing system.
There is a vetoing system, yeah. Basically, we have what we call the hipster tin. It's an enamel tin mug full of words, and we've got enough words in there, I think, for the next 2 years.
I think it's more like 6 now.
Okay.
Do you just keep on thinking of words and like dropping it in there?
Yeah. So if you think of a good triple bill, you'll just pop it on a little bit of paper and chuck it in the hipster tin, and we give it a good shake and take a word out at the end of every episode. But we also have Patreons that choose words for us now. Sure. So that if they think of an awesome triple bill, then they suggest that for us. Or sometimes people come up to us and they say, "Oh, we'd like to guest on this show. Can we pick a title word for you guys?" It's been really exciting, like hearing other people come up and go, "I've got an idea for a triple bill," which is really fun.
So do you often actually work it backwards from the triple bill that they've got rather than the word?
Sometimes it's easier to sort of build it round one film. Yeah. So like for my birthday pick, I wanted to do Big Trouble in Little China.
Sure. So
that meant I was like, oh God, I have to pick something with big. So I did Big and what was the other one I did?
The Big Sick.
The Big Sick, yeah. So that was really cool. And then that meant that Ben could pick The Big Lebowski to do as a deeper episode, which is one of his favourite movies. So yeah, sometimes you get to work backwards and sometimes you just,
work forwards.
Yeah.
Cool. So it was yourself, Daryl, that chose Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Yep.
Can you tell us why you chose it? And if you can do, a 2-minute synopsis. Well, you have to do it within less than 2 minutes because there's an axe over your head.
No worries. Oh, right there, yeah. Okay. The reason I chose Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is because I love it. I really do. It's one that kind of jumped up and bit me on the backside years back. I started reading the John le Carre books. Because, I'm a 75-year-old man with a rocking chair and long weekends.
And a fondness for the Cold War.
Yeah, and a fondness for the Cold War. Well, actually, that's odd, but it is kind of part of this whole thing for that drab, brutalist aesthetic. It's probably something my character, I don't know. But yeah, like even the Suspiria remake from last year, or reimagining.
Rebootquel? I don't know.
Whatever. Yeah, that with the Cold War aesthetic in that as well. That
you're also
a
massive John le Carre fan as well.
Yeah, and like just generally the John le Carre novels, and some of the adaptations are great. Some are bobbins. But
well, this strikes me as a difficult, because it was a miniseries originally. This wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, there was the book, and then the miniseries is 7 hours long.
Right.
With Sir Alec Guinness in the George Smiley role.
Yeah.
And like condensing that down to 2 hours and 7 minutes or whatever this is
because it's always kind of frightening. I mean, originally, like Game of Thrones, which just finished, and I'm not a fan, Helen, but originally they thought about doing one film per book, and that sounds insane.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And nowadays with the proliferation of TV and Netflix and stuff like that, it's easier to, and HBO just being the juggernaut.
Yeah.
Some things like that I would have thought if they're going to remake Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, even when they did remake it, I would have thought, make it as
the long form narrative structure.
Make it as a miniseries. And
I mean, recently we had Park Chan-wook do Little Drummer Girl, which was a film back in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And prior to that, obviously, we had Tom Hiddleston. I called him Hiddlesticks. Tom Hiddleston in The Night Manager as well. That was rather excellent.
It was.
Yeah. And look, the way it's looking, I'm sure we've got a long road of John le Carre adaptations. I mean, the guy's still kicking around. He's still making books. So yeah.
There's so much, backstory with his characters as well. So it's like if you just want to do one film, you can do one quite happily with just one of his characters.
Yeah.
Because they're so well written, aren't they?
Game of Thrones, but miserable Cold War stuff.
Yeah, Game of Thrones with spies. Yeah.
So we've danced around a bit, but can you give us your synopsis, and the time is starting now?
Okay, right. So, in the bleakest, darkest Cold War, in 1973, George Smiley, played by Gary Oldman, is wrenched out of early retirement in order to spy on the spies at MI6 and root out a Russian mole who has burrowed deeply within the upper floor of the MI6. I mean,
fair enough.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
About a minute, right?
That'll do. Helen, what were your thoughts on Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, or TTSS?
We're breathing into it.
Yeah.
Nice.
This is my third time watching it. I saw it at the cinema. I think this film's brilliant. The adaptations you've already mentioned, they're pretty strong, but I haven't seen the TV miniseries. No, I don't know whether I'd be prepared for 7 hours. That's quite a long time. Whereas 2 hours is pretty good runtime for what kind of happens in there. I think it's a really rewarding film, and I know there's so many people who really hate it and find it really infuriating. But when I was rewatching it this time, I made a list of sort of the cast. So you've got John Hurt, Mark Strong, Colin Firth, Gary Oldman, Toby Jones, Benedict Cumberbatch, Stephen Graham, Tom Hardy, and then you've also got Basil Exposition from Austin Powers and Trigger.
Yes, it's a really strong cast.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's kind of the cream of British actors.
And I guess when was this released again?
2011.
So this is pre Tom Hardy and Benedict Cumberbatch being the tour de force that they are now.
Yeah. They were literally just coming up in their careers.
This is almost like a youth training ground for those guys to
kind of
appear next to.
Learn from the masters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Well, Tom Hardy's role, like Ricky Tarr, was originally cast as Michael Fassbender.
Yeah.
And he had to pull out of it due to X-Men and First Class. Yeah.
I think he's great in this. I think Tom Hardy's brilliant. Because he's a bit more of a he's kind of the guy that they send in on the ground to do the dirty jobs.
Yeah.
And I think because he is quite young in this and he is a bit of a cheeky chappy, I think it suits him really, really well.
And he's one that legitimately kind of falls in love, which you think is like Spy Book 101. Don't fall in love.
No, never.
Like, dude.
No kissing.
He's one that, like Tom Hardy, I think for me, I prefer him when he's kind of in a supporting role rather than a main role. He seems to be
Locke
a little
is like
bit
the worst
better.
film for you.
I mean, there are moments that I quite like, but
you didn't like Venom? I mean,
I didn't see Venom.
No, nobody did.
And the one that
you saw Venom.
The one where he's two characters was a bit much.
Legend.
That was it.
What were your thoughts, Jeanette?
I think this is a masterpiece. I mean, it's not only like John le Carre does amazing spy novels. His stories are really, really rich, and they are slow burns. Like, I totally appreciate if you don't like a slow burn, this is not for you.
Sure.
Yeah, if you like your spy thrillers action packed, like, choose something else. But this is one of the most beautifully made films I think I've seen in a really, really long time. I've seen it quite a few times now. But yeah, the detail and the sort of the attention to detail, the attention to the time period as well. The way it's shot, the way it looks, like, it's just so rich. Like, it's the color palette's really muted to help you sort of really get into that time period.
Yeah.
Like that kind of, it's 70s, is that where we're looking?
73, yeah.
Yeah. So like to look at that kind of really get you into that 70s mood. But yeah, every shot is just beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. And every time I see it, I kind of discover more about it that I like. And you're like, look at that shot. Like, look how that's set up. That's gorgeous. But yeah, the acting in it's stunning. Absolutely stunning.
I mean, let's talk a bit more about how it looks, because this is shot by Hoyt van Hoytema, who most recently did the war film with Tom Hardy that Christopher Nolan shot.
Dunkirk.
That's the one. So he recently shot that, and that looks stunning as well. Yeah. I think he did Let the Right One In as well with Tomas Alfredson.
Yeah.
So I think he's like you have the pairings.
Go-to guy, yeah.
And as you say, it's such a muted colour palette, but yet it looks immensely beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's like the opposite of Austin Powers, isn't it? In terms of like Garrison's, like the opposite spy movie. But even though it's so muted and grey and like dim oranges, it really does draw you in, because some of the half the film is just on someone's face really closely, and they're moving very slowly, but yet you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's happening.
That lighting's incredible.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if you're looking at it kind of objectively, like if you've seen it and you've already you know the storyline, you know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I think this is great as a suspense thriller as well. It's actually quite tense in places. But yeah, once you've sort of seen it the first time around, the next time you can see it, you kind of just sit back and enjoy it. You're just like, oh my God, look at that. Look at the way that, like, look at that background. Like, look at that wallpaper. Look at that haircut. Look at those suits. Like, it's just stunning. I love it.
There's a lot of great hair in this.
Yeah.
Some of it, we had a conversation before you were here about the hair. Some of it's fake, I believe.
It must be.
Some of it is real.
That's actually Benedict Cumberbatch's real hair.
So there we go.
I was saying I'm very, very poor at recognising
Pretty
wigs.
sure.
Nor do I seek out bad wigs.
It's not Mark Strong's real hair.
That's definitely not Mark Strong's real hair.
Does he have real hair?
No. As far as I know, no, he doesn't. Yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch is actually quite fair, naturally.
Oh, is that his normal hair?
Yeah.
So we're used to Sherlock.
We're used to Sherlock. I used to work in the salon where he got his hair dyed black for Sherlock.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So yeah, when he came in, I'd giggle and squeak and run away because he's quite wonderful. But yeah, that's more, that looks more like how he looks naturally. But yeah, because we're so used to having his hair dyed black, that's what we think he looks like.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about Tom Hardy?
Tom Hardy's hair, that's just an Oasis cut, isn't it? I don't know if that's a wig or not, but that's just an Oasis shag cut.
It's a little bit fluffier than his usual hair.
Yes. Yeah.
Gary Oldman's glasses.
Stunning.
I love it.
Crazy.
Love them.
I mean, how could he see through them before?
They're varifocals. As far as I can figure out, they're actually varifocals. I don't know if they're his real glasses, because he is a glasses wearer.
I do hope not.
Yeah, because that means he's really blind.
But then that kind of adds to the George Smiley character, the fact that, he's often, seen as being very Toad-like. And those, the big kind of eyes in there, that's definitely, he's unassuming as well.
He sees all.
He sees all, absolutely.
He sees everything.
Is that how he's described in the books?
Definitely. He's a wallpaper person. He's somebody that you wouldn't pay any mind to in any situation. Everybody underestimates him, and that's part of the power of him, I think. That's what makes him, one, a good spy, and two, somebody that can,
makes him dangerous.
Makes him very dangerous, yeah. There's a couple moments in this, as understated as everything is, where he just implies something, and he manages to bring a grown man to tears.
Yeah. He's kind of the master. Smiley is kind of the master of the very, very subtle dig. Like, he's great at kind of really cutting someone down without actually doing anything.
Yeah.
Like, he's a very subtle man, and I think Gary Oldman's perfect to play this kind of guy.
Well, I think understated and muted is like the two of the biggest adjectives that describe this film.
Yes,
because I think the first big scene is when Mark Strong goes to Budapest, gets shot, and if you were to leave at that point, you might think, oh, this is going to be
shoot 'em up,
a
action.
typical spy
exactly.
film, almost like proto James Bond, but it's just like that's the biggest thing that happens.
Yeah.
Like even when Mark Strong then shoots the mole.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we're going to explain it at the moment. Yeah. That's such an understated scene, because normally that would have been, you would have seen blood sprayed everywhere. It would have been
he'll be doing it with a sniper rifle from like 6 miles away.
Yeah.
With a laser sight, and it probably would have been a missile or something, not a gun. Do you know what I mean? It would have been a bazooka.
I do love the fact that that beginning in Budapest and that getting shot, Mark Strong getting shot in the back there. And yeah, it's even for an action scene, it's understated. But then the ramifications of that one violent act, it decimates MI6. There's a whole change of the guard. You know, the old guy is out. You know, John Hurt as Control is out, and Gary Oldman's out, and then you know your Alaline, your lovely Toby Jones as a ferocious Scottish Terrier, works his way up the food chain, along with Kieran Hines and Colin Firth and David Dennick. And yeah, it just totally obliterates the old guard and the old system. And I just love from that one very subtle spy faux pas, you end up with a complete change in everything.
And we kind of, you get the impression that there's something very, very wrong. Do you know what I mean? And all these guys are kind of desperately scrabbling to kind of control this situation, but not all of them really know what's going on. So it's kind of, they're all trying to give the impression that they know exactly what's going on and exactly who's doing what and, you know, who's in control. And it's not.
Without realising there's an actual mole.
There's an actual Russian mole just sitting around, you know, taking note of everything.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Let's be honest. Without you read the books, but do you understand what was going on the first time you watched it? Guys, let's do a quick round table.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to kind of recite it, but I could follow it just about.
Yeah. Yourself?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, again, it's one of those, like, it does require a bit of a repeat view. Because obviously I didn't read the book before I saw it, but I think you can figure out what's going on. I don't think it's that kind of, it's so cerebral that it just flies straight over your head. Like it's complicated, but you have to pay attention.
I think some of the complexity for me lay in the names of people.
Oh, right.
And then sometimes I didn't know if Alaline was his real name or it's like a code name or
right.
And like when they assigned Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, I was like, which one was that? Which one are you talking? Which one's Tinker? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
They do refer to each other by name quite a lot in it.
Mm-hmm.
So but it's still like, because as you said, there's a cast of thousands, it's still hard to like
it is a big cast.
What's going on. Like Ricky Tarr for me, I didn't know who that was the first time I watched it.
I got a bit confused as to Carla.
Yes.
So who Carla is. So that kind of a couple of times they're saying, oh, it's Carla. You're just like, who the
Who's she?
Yeah. Who's that? Is it that Russian or that Russian? I can't remember.
So you had Carla, Control and the circus. And I thought they were like an amorphous, like they're the bodies. And it's only like reading afterwards I learned the circus was their
The circus is MI5, and
MI6
Control is
MI6.
Yeah, Control is the boss.
This film does not piss about.
No.
And if you think the series in the late 70s was 7 hours to tell this exact story, and I only watched that for the first time about 2 months ago.
The series?
Yeah.
Okay,
and you know what? You don't lose anything.
Sure.
By condensing this down into this 2 hour film, because this is so, there's 6 months to edit this. And it's so relentless. It takes no prisoners. The lingo they use is, it's the lingo that John le Carre and his fellow spy agents were using. Because, write what you know, that's what John le Carre did. He was an MI6 agent. And his cover, whilst working in Berlin in the late 50s and 60s, was he's an author of spy novels. Yeah, how amazing is that? But yeah, so this is all the lingo that he was using, and it's this does not piss about this film. It does not take prisoners. It just picks you up by the scruff of the neck, and if you're not getting it, tough shit. Basically, the finish line is 2 hours and 8 minutes that direction.
Yeah.
How does it compare then? Does this miniseries take more time to explain? This is MI6, but we call it Circus.
No,
anyway, that guy's
there is
Tinker.
none of that. It's just very slow going.
Right.
Like everything takes a lot longer to get to the point. Yeah. Very drawn out. Like you can almost hear a grandfather clock ticking in the back of every single scene. It kind of did my head in a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. Gary Oldman. For the win, I think.
Yeah,
personally.
always.
Over Alec Guinness.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So Gary Oldman for Obi-Wan Kenobi in the next iteration. Well, let's not have another iteration.
Gary Oldman for anything.
Yeah. Well, he
much.
can play anything. Like I'm truly convinced the man could be anyone. Like looking back at his career, like the man's been Dracula, he's been a dreadlocked pimp, he's been a drug-addled. Yeah, he's been Sid Vicious, he's been a drug-addled American police chief. Like he's just a chameleon. I think he's amazing. And just recently being Churchill as well. So
and winning for Churchill.
I'm winning for Churchill.
Was anything nominated for this?
I
film?
think it's probably more.
I think he got
director.
Yeah, I think he might have got 3 nominations, but not a chance of
no
winning.
win.
I think this is this is his best performance.
Gary Oldman?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Let's have a think on that whilst we're going into...
I think he's done a lot of really, really fun things, but I think this just came at the right time for him and just upped his game just that little bit.
Should we head into the scores, guys?
Sure.
Welcome to the Spreadsheet of Dreams. So our scoring system is out of 5. You may have decimal places if you wish. The lowest you can have is a 0. And we will start with you, Daryl, because you picked it with the recommendability, please.
Okie dokie. So, recommendability score. Now, this is going to seem quite shocking, but I'm going to go with a 3.8. Because this isn't for everyone. And it's not that, it almost feels like that 90s extreme thing, like, this ain't your mama's spy movie. But it's definitely...
Sorry, was that a thing?
I don't know, but like where the 90s, where everything was extreme with a capital X. And this is
Extreme.
the complete antithesis of that. Because, if you think last year we had Mission Impossible - Fallout with Mission Imp, whereas Mission Imping about in the most amazing, spectacular ways possible.
Yeah.
And we've had Bond films for years, and even the more subdued ones, I think, are still more science fiction than spy movie.
Yeah. And we come like Jason Bourne is like...
Yeah. And Jason Bourne, I think, kind of misses out on this as well. This is a syrupy, slow, mellifluous kind of... For some people will find this a drudge. I know that, and that's totally cool. I totally get it. It might not be your cup of tea, but if it is, this is extremely my shit.
This is totally your jam, isn't it?
3.8 for you. Jeanette?
I'm going to give it a 4 for recommendability, because most of the people I know probably will dig this. The people who we hang out with and our friends and sort of people in the film community. Like, I don't think...
Film community.
Yeah.
Nice.
Especially like the Twitter film community as well. They want to see films that kind of blow your head back a little bit. Yeah. People tend to want to see these kind of films. So yeah, I'd say by the people I know that they would all really enjoy this. So I'd say like totally a 4. Yeah.
Helen?
For the same reasons that you gave it, but I'm going to give it a 4. If I was rating this how much I like it, then I'd give it a 5 easily. But not everyone's going to like it. But I'm only going to take 1 point away from it.
I'm going to go for 3.5. Same reasons you two have said on the other side of the table, but I'm being a bit more stringent. Because it is a hard ask, and I asked my wife if she saw it by herself, and she said she really enjoyed it, and I asked her if she wanted to watch it again, and she's like, no. And there's a slow-paced nature, and I think you have to be kind of in the mood to watch it as well.
Yeah. For sure.
It is only 2 hours. There are a lot of other films that are a lot longer than this and say a lot less.
And are not made as well, either.
And that's how you're quite happy to play the time card, depending on how much you like the film or not.
But there's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on.
Because sometimes 2 hours is a long time for you.
Yeah, it is.
But 2 hours, in this case, is fine.
Because there's just so much going on. I don't have time to be like looking at my watch going, hurry up a bit.
Yeah, but I'm going 3.5. People who want, if you say it's a spy film, they're going to think one way, like you said, Daryl. And but I think the other spy films are farcical. Even like James Bond, especially, I think is one for me. I rarely like any James Bond films.
George isn't going to have any gadgets.
Yeah.
Like, George doesn't have gadgets. He's
like,
not.
Where's Q? Where's Q? Where's the quartermaster? This is set in England.
Yeah.
Where's
the
your
invisible
Aston
car?
Martin? Yeah, exactly. But yeah, this is about your wits. This is about using your mind and your brain. It's a much more cerebral kind of spy thing. So yeah, I think it isn't going to be for everybody, but I think it would be a real shame if people didn't watch it because they wanted explosions.
Do you think this is based on your brief bio of John le Carre here? Is this the most accurate representation of a spy film, do you think?
I think it's definitely up there.
You can't believe it happening.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'd say it's not all spies are Green Berets. They don't all get up and drink 5 eggs for breakfast and go out running and
That's Rocky.
But also, they're not all mixed martial artists.
Yeah.
They don't all, get into hand-to-hand combat. Sometimes they just need people to listen to the phones for 12 hours. And that's a lot of spy work is really dull. And I think it's been very sexed up.
Yeah.
Being a spy is all about has been very, very sexed up over the past couple of decades. And I think there's some space for a little bit of boring old surveillance.
I wonder if there's been any, when you get admissions to MI6 and they just look at the interviews, okay, which spy films do you think most closely relates to what we do?
Wouldn't that be lovely?
And they go like, Austin Powers, Get Out.
Yeah. Leave.
Like, yeah. Repeat viewing score, Daryl.
Okay, simply by virtue of the fact that I've now seen this quite a few times, given this a 4.8. I see this probably once a year, and just to kind of bathe in Hoyt van Hoytma's visual aesthetic and the score, which is Alberto Iglesias. It's weird. We were actually chatting on our podcast a couple of weeks ago about Tron Legacy and how that I'd call that a mute button bar film, like you could just have that on in the background of the bar on a big screen while everything else is going on, and you just every now and then go ooh and look at it. You could totally do the same with Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Yeah. Like you could just have that on somewhere, and every now and then people would go, oh, nice curtain.
Yes, no, exactly. I mean, like one of the scenes we saw a few times was swimming in Hampstead ponds.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, actually, that looks quite interesting. And and he had his glasses on. Swimming with his glasses. I thought, dude, if you lose those glasses, you'll be fucked.
Down
clearly.
The bottom of the ponds.
Yeah, exactly.
You ain't diving for those.
Jeanette.
So repeat viewing score. I mean, this is really hard because like I love this film, so I'll always quite happily sit down and watch Tinker Tailor. But it's again, it's like, is
this a drop of the hat rewatch, or would you think? No.
I do need to be in the mood, I guess, because I also like quite silly films as well. I'm definitely the silliest one of the podcasts. Like when it comes to our film choices, Daryl's like the big epic ones, and Ben's more into his Asian cinema, and I really like the silly stuff. So yeah, maybe I'll give this like a 4, I reckon, for repeat viewing. I will definitely watch it again, and I love watching it every single time. So yeah, maybe a 4.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to go for a 4. I think it's really, really rewarding to watch it again because there is so much going on that to only watch it once really doesn't do it justice, because once you kind of get into the second time watching it, you can kind of remember the main plot points, but there's just so much else going on that you can really absorb yourself in it. And it's just, it is over 2 hours, but the pace of it is just continuous throughout, that it just doesn't really sag.
No. And I think like as well, like the acting in it is so wonderful that sometimes like, because rewatching it again the other night, it was like I'd forgotten how subtle some of the performances are, and they'll convey so much with like a lift of an eyebrow or like just ever so subtle movements, and it's just like just reminding yourself of these performances. I think it's definitely worth endless rewatches because you'll never remember all of it. You know.
This is my second time watching it. The first time was at the cinema, and it's one of those films where I thought I should watch that again, and then never got around to it. Yes, I should watch that again. And I think because it's not a drop of the hat rewatch.
No.
That's the reason I haven't watched it again up until now. But ultimately, like you guys have said, it's something that deserves rewatching because there's so many things to take out of it, and I think it's going to be a shorter time between my next rewatch because I want to rewatch it again and look at things again and try and pick up things which I missed and didn't understand without Wikipediaing. So I'm going to go for 3.7. I'm going to say here.
You
for
love a decimal
score.
Point, don't you?
Yeah, I love it. Go as far as you want. Let's go for small screen score. Daryl.
Okay, so I've gone 4.2 for this.
All right. Did you watch this in the cinema?
I did not. No, 2011. What was I doing in 2011? Doesn't even bear thinking about.
You were at uni, right?
Probably. Yeah, by then. Yeah, I was a bit of a late.
You were too busy having fun.
Probably. No, I didn't. I missed this at the cinema, so I couldn't tell you like big screen wise. And then watching at home, big old telly. But like, I think you could totally, with the small screen. This isn't big razzle dazzle spectacle where you need the biggest. You don't need IMAX for this movie. You don't need that. So
high def for sure.
I could totally sit back with the iPad on, have a paddle in the bath.
Well, we're talking really a TV scenario, not necessarily iPad. It's the home viewing.
Yeah, well then, totally. Like, no worries.
Yeah, I think you'd miss out on a lot if it was anything less than, how big is our telly? It's
40 something.
Yeah, I'd say watching it on like a laptop screen, I think you'd really miss out on quite a lot of the detail, and kind of the color palette would just, you'd end up fiddling with the buttons. Do you know what I mean? You might be brightening it, or like it's just like leave it alone. It's fine as it is.
So for yourself then, Jeanette.
Oh, small screen score. I'm gonna say 3, because like I say, I just think it's not this kind of film. I would much rather see it bigger rather than smaller. because there's so much detail.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think it deserves to be seen quite like telly size for sure. Like no smaller than telly. Just, yeah.
Helen?
Well, having seen it at the cinema, I enjoyed watching it at the cinema, and I like watching it on the big screen, but also I quite enjoyed watching it on my TV at home. I don't think, I mean, other than it being bigger, there wasn't really anything I can get from that. And I think also with it being on Netflix, if you are a little bit like, oh, I can't sit down for 2 hours, then you could conveniently give yourself a little break if you needed it.
Do you think so?
If someone's going to go, I'm not going to watch it because it's 2 hours, just say, well, give yourself a little break.
Have an intermission.
Yeah, have a little intermission. You can do that on Netflix. And also, I just think it's a really great film, and it's on Netflix, available for you to kind of watch at your leisure. And so I'm going to give it a 5. I think.
Oh, wow.
And also, I think because obviously there's already been the original TV version was made for TV. I think there's a certain
back in the
70s,
yeah. So that would have
been
been that would be quite murky just because of
it is
lenses.
super murky.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think it kind of works that way. And also there's this, when you're watching it at home, you kind of get sucked in a little bit more to kind of like the more claustrophobic elements of it. And I felt it was a little bit closer. So I think it's perfectly fine to watch on your TV.
So this time round, I watched it on iPad because I was traveling a lot. So I downloaded
Sacrilegious.
it. Yeah, I didn't have time to sit down on the TV and watch it at home. So I watched it on the train. Does not work that well on a small screen for me. I saw it in cinema as well and was completely enveloped by it, even though, like I said, we talked about the muted colour palette, and everything kind of draws you in a bit more. I think with the biggest, it's nice seeing their faces moving slowly bigger. So I'm going to go for 3.5 here for small screen score. I think I preferred it in the cinema.
I'd have loved to have seen it in the cinema. I didn't actually catch it in the cinema, but I can imagine it being like completely submersive. Like I really would have got into it if it was massive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't. This is not the kind of film that you would watch on your phone.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, you'd never
no
do
way.
that.
Well, some people do.
I know, but
I don't want to use the term monster, but you know, I might.
Well, I think when I went to the cinema, a group of friends I was with, someone fell asleep.
No.
Yeah,
no, I totally get that. I do.
They had a little snooze. And they're like, what happened? I was like, I can't explain it.
It's far too complicated.
There was a mole.
Did that in Spectre when I took him to see that.
I'm not surprised. I've not seen it.
Right out.
Sounds sleepy.
Very dull.
I think the last film I fell asleep in was one of the pirates.
Fair
and
enough.
the second or third one.
Fair dues.
I get it.
Yeah,
I do.
Like, this is gash. Should have stopped at the first one. Engagement score then.
All right, wicked. Engagement score. I'm going to give this 5. Absolutely. Again, I watch this every single year, and I will watch this again and again.
Do you have like an anniversary date? Have you got it in the calendar?
It's funny. It's like since using Letterboxd, I'm like, I will watch. You know, I think I'll give Tinker Tailor, dust off my Blu-ray, and then go to like, because every single film, you know, I have to log it, and then I'm like, oh, I watched this last year. Oh, and the year before. Oh my word, and the year before that.
Does it tell you when you've what?
Yeah, it just gives you exactly when you watched it.
Okay,
in previous years as well.
I was wondering what the extra benefit of Letterboxd is versus other things that are kind of available,
like a notebook.
Well, I mean, obviously,
yeah. Fingers crossed. Working title. Pull their finger out and get the Smiley's People, which is the third in the Carle trilogy made. Which is they skipped the middle one with the mini series in the late 70s, early 80s as well, and went straight on to Smiley's People, which was the second. Where you had Alec Guinness reprising his role as George Smiley. And Gary Oldman in an interview about 2 years ago was like, well, the script's in place, the script's there, they're just waiting for everything to happen. And I think after Tomas Alfredson's The Snowman,
which was by all means, by all accounts.
Yeah, I think he got burnt by the snowman.
Yeah.
It was not good.
So fingers crossed. But yeah, for me, that's a 5, definitely.
Jeanette?
This is engagement, right?
Yes, engagement.
Well, for me, it's a 5. You know, I'm sure it's going to be different for everyone, but yeah, this is kind of, how can you not be engaged by this? How can you not be totally sucked in by this? Yeah. It's just, it's so beautiful. And yeah, John le Carre stories are brilliant anyway, because I feel like they're just a nice level of complicated. Like they're not ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? They're not stupidly complicated, but you do have to pay attention, and you do have to, like, you can't browse Twitter whilst this is on.
So do you think like The Night Manager was a nice level for miniseries because it had a bit of action, had a bit more, had sex and intrigue in it as well?
Yeah.
Whereas this is like very little action at the start, some at the end.
Less sex.
Much less sexy, yeah.
Although they might have focused a bit on the infidelity kind of storyline a bit, might have had time for that.
In the series, they did a bit more.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things from the books is the fact that George Smiley's wife she comes from a higher class,
yes,
to say, and she just gets very bored and, infidelity left, right and centre, so to speak.
Helen?
I am also going to go for A5. You have to give it your full attention. If not, you're just not going to get the experience out of it. And as a case in point, I sort of half watched The Little Drummer Girl, and I was like faffing about on my phone and not really giving it my attention, and I don't really know what happened in that. So that was my fault. Yep. Should have learned. And yeah, all the times I've watched it, I've just been so engaged because you just have to be, otherwise you don't know what's going on.
I'm also going to go for a 5 here, and that's going to be based on the first time watching it because the second time, like I said, iPad on a train just doesn't really work. But yeah, the first time it's just like, oh wow, Smiley's got a huge face with huge glasses.
Yeah, his big owl eyes.
That ridiculous detail. It's not often in films that they spend so much time on people's faces and you're like, enthralled by it. So yeah, I'm going to go for a 5 here.
Wow.
And that gives us 4.2. 1875.
That's very strong, that is.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Excellent.
This could have, for a film that's so complicated, I think that could have quite easily gone lower
Gone
score.
the other way.
So we always reach out to people on Twitter before we record, and in this case we said we put a tweet out saying we're reviewing Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy with STD Film Podcast. Have you seen it? Tell us your thoughts for an on-air shout out on Flixwatcher, and a few people got back to us. So Daryl, do you want to take us through the first one?
Okie dokie. So, top film tip. After losing control, ex-spy must weed out double agent from circus and expose witchcraft in MI5's midst. So, yeah, Secrets and Lies, Whispers and Spies, intelligent intelligence thriller.
Nice.
I believe that's 5 little spies out of 5 little spies.
And he calls it MI5 was
MI6.
It's definitely MI6. Oh yeah, witchcraft was another thing that confused me.
Gotcha. Yeah. Right. Yeah. No. Well, this is witchcraft. It's all of the jargon. that in this for sure, and they don't stop. Like most films would have witchcraft is actually the secret operation from. Like you'd get that. Yeah. We don't. Basil exposition is a thing that does not really exist in this film. No. Really, we don't get any of that.
And that's what makes it rewarding going back to it. And I think so. I think it's great for that.
You have to think.
Yeah.
It's not like spooned into your ears. You have to be like, oh.
But I think that's why, because you had Circus and you had Control. Control was a person, Carl was a person, but then Circus wasn't a person. I was like, okay, so what? Am I looking for a dog?
I liked the kind of more, the more subtle stuff, like when they said, he went off to become a lotus eater. And you really have to think about that. And it's like, he became he went off and lived on his own like a monk. Do you know what I mean? So
we
it's
got the Scalp Hunters as well.
And you got the Lizard Fund, which is the retirement fund. So it's all of these really subtle little things that they just drop in. You have to really think about
next time I might just make a little glossary
of spy talk.
Where's to watch out for?
A watching companion for John le Carre.
Yeah.
Like a little reference book you can look up.
Yeah.
Helen.
So the next one is from Liam H. Dempsey. Lean, wonderfully stylized, star-studded reimagining of le Carre's source material. Oldman plays tribute to Guinness's portrayal of George Smiley whilst very much putting his own stamp on the iconic role, and he's gone for 4 stars.
Nice. Liam H. Dempsey, former guest on Sun Double Deep and former guest on here as well with the spotlight.
Yeah.
Darren, do you want to take the last one?
Gotcha. Right, 5. One of my all-time favourite movies. A spy film that actually goes some way towards showing the real side of spying. Example, it's slow, patient, dishonest and depressing work. Some amazing performances as well. And that's Pete Langelt.
Yeah.
He gives that one a 5.
And he gave it
and someone also put a cat gif on there. I'm not sure what that refers to, but thank you for that. I'm enjoying that.
Anything with a cat will curry Helen's favour.
More cats.
More cats in the world. Thanks a lot, guys, for coming on. Can you sign off by telling people where we can find you online? And you guys do talk about your Letterboxd accounts on your podcast, so do.
Yeah, I'm not on Letterboxd, but Daryl and our co-host Ben are on Letterboxd. You can find Ben on Twitter and on Letterboxd as BenjiBox, and that's BenjiBox with a Y. As I like to say on the podcast. But yeah, you can find Sun Double Deep on Apple Podcasts and anywhere where you find podcasts, pretty much. And you can find Daryl lurking about on Twitter at SDD Film Podcast.
It's SDD Film Podcast.
Yeah.
Just in case.
SDD Film Podcast.
Well, we get this a lot anyway when somebody goes, "Oh, you got a podcast?" Yeah. It's Sudden Double Deep. And they go, "Is it porn films?" No. And then SDD Film Podcast, not STD Film Podcast. Thank you very much.
Is that something that came to light after you started?
Oh, yeah. That was a eureka moment after the fact.
No.
Yeah.
It's too late now.
But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Miss J Soundtrack. And you can find us on Instagram as well at STD Film Podcast.
Fantastic. Well, cheers for coming on, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for
inviting us. It was a pleasure.
Us.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. Enjoy listening to Flixwatcher podcast? Make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen to your podcasts. Why not leave us your 5-star review on iTunes and follow us at Flixwatcher Pod on Twitter.
Thank you, Rachel Jordan, for editing this podcast and making it sound so smooth and slick and sweet. And thank you very much to Mighty People for the tunes that you all are enjoying now.